Two. What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to somebody who's a prize pupil of Crime Times JTG, a person who has sat under the learning tree of former WWE Tag Team Champion as well as former WWE Cruiserweight Champion Paul London at the Paul London Kayfabe Academy. He's the one, the only Wonderkid, Will Andy. Will, what's going on, bro?
Thank you, man. That was wow, I was not expecting that introduction, but thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. I'm really excited to do my first ever podcast, so I'm excited. I feel good.
You'll never forget your first time.
Yeah, you never forget your first time. Yeah, never forget it. Never forget it.
I'm so honored. And to give people a backstory, man, I happen to be good friends with Aaron Glass Ceiling, right? And who may or may not. I guess we can pull the wool. You might have the a stake in the Kayfabe Academy, and he was like, "You got to come to the show. You got to come to the show, Woods. Like, it'll be great." And when he used to run a promotion, it was literally like blocks away from my house, right? My former residence and what have you. And I would just be, I when I lived where I lived on the ass end of the Hollywood side, like I wouldn't always go out for work, like long commutes or whatever. So by the time, like you would think, logistically speaking, a promotion like maybe 5 blocks away from my house, I'd be able to attend, but I'd be on the other side of the city, right? So like it just never paired up. So I was like, if nothing else, I'm gonna go this. And then Paul London, man, I've been a fan of his since like the jump, that whole like Texas Wrestling Academy, Danielson, Kendrick, like what's his man? Trevor Murdoch and Lance. Yeah, rest in peace. Lance Cade. Yeah. I mean, geez, man. Like, so I was totally jazzed, right? But like, not to give you the shine, but like, there were a lot of talented performers on that card, right? And a lot of people cutting their teeth, different styles of wrestling, and different influence is per wrestling, right? But there was something about you, dude, and I just, it stood differently. The presentation. I'm a combat sports guy. You have, Muay Thai style shorts, whatever. Wonderkid. It brought back memories of Alex Wright. Dodge Wonderkid. Yeah, absolutely. So I was just like, and also, they talk about people like The Rock and different people who just have it. And you may, and you've done a lot of dates since that time I first saw you, right? And kudos to you for that. But even then, in its formative time, right? Like, I almost kind of liken it to, The Rock in Memphis as Flex Kavana, right? Like, you just know there's something about that person, something different. And that's what I like. So, yeah, man. And it's so cool, man, because like I've been kind of percolating this in my head or whatever. I had to kind of figure some stuff out, but like I was like, "Hey, want to do the podcast?" And you're like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, brother." I was like, "Shit, yeah."
Hop on board. Yeah, I was very excited when you originally texted me to do a podcast. I was like, dude, I am so like I'm down. I'm a podcast guy. I love listening to podcasts. Like I love listening to like Jim Cornette's podcast, like the experience in the drive through. For me, like podcasts always been like just a thing for me because I love just talking and just really just talking about stuff that I like wrestling and other things. So going back to what you said, like, yeah, man, like I really appreciate those words because like for me, I feel like I'm put a lot under pressure because I'm very young and I'm doing this crazy thing that's pro wrestling. And you mentioned like how the combat sports fit of the Muay Thai shorts and everything. That's very much what I inspired. For me, I want because obviously in wrestling, be yourself. You don't want to be like your favorite guy. You don't want to be a counterfeit. You don't want to be like The Rock with the short tights and the elbow pad, or you don't want to be like Bret Hart with the singlet and the pink tights. You want to be your own person, right? You want to stand out from the rest. For me, I'm like, what's me? Like, what is something that I would fit into? And I did a little bit of Muay Thai training in my time before becoming a professional wrestler, and during training to be one, I did Muay Thai training. And I love combat sports. I love MMA. I love watching all kinds. I love watching the UFC, the PFL, Bellator. You know, I love MMA. I just love watching MMA. So I was like, okay, I'll wear Muay Thai shorts to the ring, and I'll wear some kick pads, and give that real fighter look, because I wanted to use the style of a striker. I wanted to use a lot of strikes in my game when I wrestle. So I was like, okay, Muay Thai shorts would be a perfect fit. Um, Matt Fuller, who was training me at the time, also gave me an idea of like, hey, like use fight shorts. Like it would really look good with your style of wrestling and just the way you are. And so that's how I came up with using the Muay Thai shorts and using all these strikes. That's very much me. you know. So like I really appreciate you saying that, because I really, like, the first time around that you saw me, I was very much like very nervous to really perform out there. But yeah, I'm always someone that's like, I'm implementing stuff about me into my wrestling game. You know, um, I'm a big soccer fan, so for me, I wear like jackets that are like soccer, like that soccer players use to go out to the ring. That's what I use. You know, so I'm always implementing things that are just me. And the name Wonderkid actually came um from soccer, because in soccer, when there's a young player, like a teenager that's a really good player, they're called Wonder Kids. That's what people call them. They call them Wonder Kids. Like, this player's up and coming, he's scoring goals, he's doing this and that. I was like, okay, I'm at the time I'm 18 years old. I'm gonna enter professional wrestling, and I want to be like the best. So Wonder Kid, that's where Wonder Kid came from. Wanted to use Wonder Boy, but obviously, Stephen Thompson uses that in the UFC. So I was like, screw it, we'll go with Wonder Kid. And Will Andy is basically like my middle name and my first name, just switched around. So that's how I came up with my name, the Wonder Kid. So that's basically like a little bit of my backstory. Yeah.
No, that I mean, I think that's the best, right? Or
Right.
you take elements of your real life and then you
Hmm.
create a persona. I mean, dare I say persona, right? Because different
Yeah.
strokes, different folks, and what have you.
Right.
But Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? It says like
Hmm.
it's who you are. You just crank
Right.
that some bitch up to 10, right?
Yep.
It's sometimes 100, right? But
Right.
those are the things that kind of set you apart, right? And you can
Hmm.
tell if somebody isn't into what they're doing, right? And
Right.
even
Right.
even like what you were saying, right? Well, Muay Thai shorts, you did Muay Thai, right?
Hmm.
You know, maybe most than others. Like I've got shitty
Yeah.
jujitsu, but like my shitty
Right.
jujitsu probably is not as bad as I think in my head, right? My imposter
Right.
syndrome will tell me, right? Against just people that are just completely uninitiated, right? So with that
Right.
all being said, like you taking bits of that is amazing. And then also
Yeah.
in terms of like getting people into it, well, all combat sports. I don't care if you call it Muay Thai, boxing, jiu-jitsu,
Hmm.
MMA, what have you, catch wrestling,
Yeah.
lutte libre or lucha libre, right?
Hmm.
It should be a fight. That's one
Right.
thing that like
Yep.
I loved about the era that I grew up in with like a Mean Gene Oakland or
Yeah.
Gorilla Monsoon and Lord Alfred Hayes, because they would be like, if a guy lost, you don't go to the pay window.
Yep.
And just setting that in people's minds, right? And then you
Right.
would see, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig on Lifestyles with
Yeah.
the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach, and he's interviewed millionaires and what have you, and Mr. Perfect is there, right? You're
Hmm.
like, oh, duh, because Mr. Perfect is Intercontinental Champion. He
Right.
went to the pay window, and look at what the pay window got him.
But yep. Yeah. That's very true. Like, for me, like, pro wrestling, to me, I it's a form of like a, not even performance. It's like a fight. It's a struggle. For me, like, pro wrestling is a mixture of combat sports, into a squared circle. And for me, like, when I wrestle, I take it like I'm fighting, for my life, you know, because like you said, like, if someone lost, they didn't go to the pay window, you know, you need to sell it like that. For me, it's like pro wrestling has meaning when it looks like it matters to someone, when you're out there and like you're in the fight of your life, especially like if you're A smaller person going against a bigger man, and you want to beat this guy, you want to give it your all. Hence why I use my strikes like I'm trying to knock this guy out. Like this boom boom kick, bam. I'm trying to take his head off. I don't want this to go any longer. I'm in the fight of my life. Which is why I take my styles from guys like Brett, because Brett, he looked like he was just you just he's the greatest to ever do it. He's the greatest to ever do it. He just looks like an athlete. He looks like a fighter. He looks like someone that's like, wow, this guy really knows. Nothing was phony. Nothing was phoned in. It was all just his grappling, his submissions, his punches, his selling. Everything was just perfect. It was executed perfectly. And that's what I believe that's what pro wrestling is. I'm not I don't do many flips. Like I'm someone that probably should because of the way I look. But for me, like, it has more impact if I just strike someone. That's me. I'm not really that acrobatic. I'm more like, well, dogfight. So that's why for me, like, that's why I implemented tricks in my game. To really make this look like we're in a fight. Not just like we're going through the motion, or we're like, here, let me help you go up the rope. It's very much like you and I are gonna go at it and like fight.
No, absolutely, and that's the thing about it. Like, and I love that you mentioned Brett. That is literally like the first thing that I ever saw of combat sports. I was like a toddler, right? And it was I
Right.
can remember it vividly, but it was Randy Savage versus like one half of the Hart Foundation,
Yeah.
Bret the Hitman Hart, flanked by the evil referee Danny Davis, Jimmy the Anvil
Yeah.
Neidhart, and Mathis Shout Jimmy Hart. Like
Yeah.
the best, the most complete incarnation of the Hart Foundation of that era. Obviously, as you fast forward, I think one of the best factions ever. The Hart Foundation with
Right.
Pillman and
Yeah.
Bulldog and
Yeah.
Anvil. Jeez Louise, I'd take those guys like into hell and fight the devil himself. Like
Yeah.
that's
Of course.
that's it.
Yeah.
That and the Dangerous Alliance. You got young
Hmm.
Steve Austin, Rick Rude, Bobby Eaton. Like those, like when people talk
Yeah.
about other factions or whatever, it's like I know but it's your bias. Like because you
Yeah.
grew up
Yeah.
with DX and everything, and nothing against DX, and look at that,
Right.
whatever. But like to me, top two, Heart Foundation, Dangerous Alliance, and I mean, why is it the Dangerous Alliance? Oh yeah, Paul Heyman, Paul E.
Yeah.
Dangerously. You had Medusa flanking him. Like, huh, what?
Yeah.
Like, what's better than? Again, I'll go down a wormhole. But again, so when I saw Brett and Savage, this is Saturday night's main event, August of '87. I was born May 7th, 1985. I was
Right.
two. I was two. But I know that I grew up in San Francisco in a Victorian apartment, and my
Yeah.
parents are always worried, right? I would watch like Popeye and Mighty Mouse and everything like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and I would fly out the bloody window because I was an
Right.
impressionable kid, even in that deal, right? So when I saw like Savage and Hart, and oh man, I'm not spoiling it, but like, look at the finish. Look at the finish
Of
and
course.
how
Yeah.
well crafted it was, and everything. Just like again, the struggle, right? Good,
Yeah.
evil, what have you. And that was the first thing I saw of any combat sports, right? And it was a
Right.
lot safer to jump off my bed or the family couch than it was like what Mighty Mouse was doing, right? So,
Right. Right. Right.
uh, so with that all being said, like that was it. So when I then my dad and uncles would watch like Cesar Chavez fights,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or Tommy Hearns and Mike Tyson and Butterbean, and I was just like, okay, ring, 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 and then later MMA, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was it. And guess what? In all art, right?
Right.
Canvas is at the centerpiece, right? Or that you
Hmm.
paint, whether it be a sheet, that you write lyrics on,
Yeah.
Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, anything, boxing, pro wrestling, right? It's a canvas, right?
Right.
The only difference is the tools. The only
Hmm.
difference is the tools, right? And in our case, in combat sports, you're, yes, you're an artist, but you're also a combatant, right? You're
Right.
where art meets sport and culture, right?
Yeah.
So with that all being said, what happens is you are using your weapons that you
Hmm.
honed over the course of your career up to that point to create a masterpiece. Now, that
Right.
masterpiece might be in the field in which you're in, dropping somebody on their neck. Hey,
Right.
taking limbs, right?
Yeah.
Knocking a mother trucker out, right?
Yeah,
But that's to me, that's no different than a Picasso or Rembrandt or Van Gogh.
yeah,
You're just
right,
taking your tools and creating something in. And of course,
yeah,
there's going to be people that, critics that are going to be like,
right, of course, of
ugh,
course.
it's so stupid because you're
Yeah,
going against the grain, right?
right,
But if you make it and succeed, those are ones like, I always knew he could do it.
yeah, right. Because for me, like, to me, like us pro wrestlers, like yes, like you said, we're artists. We're athletes. You know, we train our bodies every day. We're training like athletes. You know, we're working out. We're constantly making sure we're in good condition. We're athletes, and you should treat yourself like one. You know, for me, it's like we're pro wrestlers. Like it's in the name. We're professional wrestlers. You know, we're not ballerinas. We're not stuntmen. We're not actors. We are pro athletes. And to me, my matches, I want to make it look like these are two athletes in a combat match. You know, and that's what the canvas is for. That's why I love pro wrestling. I love it when it's so beautifully done to where it looks like a competition. You know, it looks like you just watched, Royce Gracie compete, and to me that's what pro wrestling is all about. It's just all about going out there and being the athlete that you really are. Like, don't pretend it, be it, live it, like soak it in. Flex your muscles, flex your cardio, like all that. That ring is your stage to really showcase your athleticism.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, you're much like myself, are versed in, of various combat sports, right? So,
Yeah,
what found you first? Was it pro wrestling? Was it MMA, Muay Thai? What was it
it
for
was
you?
it was pro wrestling. I started watching pro wrestling when I was, I believe, 6. My dad was a wrestling fan, and he put it on the TV. And like my earliest memories was just Shawn Michaels because I always imitated his dance, his entrance. Every time I watched Shawn Michaels, I'd always come out to the living room, like put up his music, and I'd just be dancing like Michaels. So I discovered pro wrestling and then fell out of it. Came back to pro wrestling around like 2011, 2012, when started watching again because of CM Punk, and uh, ever since just been the biggest pro wrestling fan ever. And then it wasn't until like I was in, I believe, middle school when I discovered like MMA. And like I really got, because I had watched, obviously boxing and all that stuff, but like I wasn't that into it. But in like seventh, eighth grade, I got really into MMA, and I really started watching like UFC and like catching up, watching back from the first UFC to Chuck Liddell and all that stuff. So it was pro wrestling and then MMA.
So, I mean, at that time you mentioned Shawn Michaels, and this
Yeah.
is latter day Shawn Michaels, right? This
Right.
is like
Right.
not even his rocker stuff. This is not even his single stuff. With,
Yeah.
if you can make an argument, I admittedly am a Brett guy, and
Of
not just
course.
a Brett guy, but like a Heart Foundation guy, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, all the guys that came from Calgary, the late great Brian Pillman, the late great British Bulldog, late great
Right.
Jim the Apple Neidhart, late great Dynamite Kid, right?
Yeah.
Like, these guys literally revolutionize the business, right? And I
Right.
mean, even with like in terms of Bruce or Ross, like they could go. All of these guys could
Yeah.
go, right? And it's the funny thing, like Helen Hart, the matriarch of the Hart
Yeah.
deal, was like, like, all my kids are wrestlers, my husband's a wrestler,
Yeah. Right.
and
Right.
all my daughters married wrestlers, right?
Right.
Like,
Wrestlers. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just, and I find myself, right, like, as a kid, like, I wanted to be Brett, right? Like,
Right.
I had an Owen, late great Owen Hart. My goodness, like, only person that I would go above Brett on my like all time favorites, right?
Yeah.
Him be Owen. Like, Owen could do the
Right.
lucha stuff, he can do the cat stuff, And the thing about it is, like, those guys, right? I mean, were so instrumental everywhere they went. It was just a mastery, right? And
Right.
even when you go back to like my favorite WrestleMania is WrestleMania 10, right?
Hmm.
Because one that I think they copied, not cut and paste, but two different times later on, the Kane
Yeah.
Undertaker story. Look at Brett and Owen, and there's so many similarities that
Right.
you know. And then later, in terms of the story arc of Brett, look at Danielson at WrestleMania 30.
Yeah.
Very Brett-esque, where he's
Hmm.
fighting on the first deal, and again,
Yeah.
like every bit of like Brett's art on that kind of trajectory was like he had
Yeah.
already won the title. He had this blood feud with his brother that started out at
Right. Right.
Survivor Series, and his other brothers were there, embarrassed, what have you. Jerry Lawler's commentary, and
Yeah.
Howard Finkel from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and then everyone's like, yeah, and then they
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
Owen's music, and it's
And
just
it's
like
like the yeah.
that's what you want. That's
Right.
you want to talk about road warrior pops and everything, and nothing against it, but geez, that's it. And then you
Yeah.
you have Owen winning, right, and then that continues on, right, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, maybe he could beat Brett, but Brett still has some topple
Yeah.
Yoko,
Yeah.
but also there's Lex Luger here because him and Brett, I mean, him and Yoko have this whole thing, right? So,
Right.
like,
Right.
all of these moving parts led to what we had in the main event with Brett and Yoko. And
Right.
it's just like, to me, like, everybody can talk about, like, oh, like the Attitude Era and the Golden Era, what have you. But, like, man, I think WWE and WWF at the time were selling the best stories
Yeah.
with Brett and Owen.
Right. I think that for me, like that opener, WrestleMania 10, Brett Owens, one of the one of the best matches of all time. Like best WrestleMania. It's one of my favorites. That's what I mean. That's what WWF and WWE does so perfectly. These stories, like you said, how they said it from Calgary, whatever, and the crowd's just waiting to see Bret, but it's Owen. That's just perfect blood feud with brothers. That's what I mean. Going back to what I said earlier, it's like pro wrestling is done right, you know, with the right stars, with the right momentum, with the right ideas. That's perfect. That's something that like you feel personally, you know, like whatever era you grew up watching wrestling, whether it's from the golden era, the early era, the attitude era, whatever, there's those stories that you connect to as a fan that really made you a fan, um, for some people it's Bret Hart stories, or for some people it's Shawn Michaels' boyhood dream, when he won the WWF title from Bret in the Iron Man match. That was their personal story that they love because they're a fan of Michaels, And you got like Daniel Bryan, like people from the modern era, like people connected with Daniel Bryan so much that they wanted nothing more than for him to win the world title at WrestleMania 30, and he did, and that's a moment that as a fan makes you fall in love with it because it just feels so good when you invest your time into someone who is that good and talented to see the payoff go well. It's like a relieving moment. And again, going back to what I said, like that's pro wrestling right there. That's pro wrestling to me. Is making people feel something. And for me, it's like even when you're in the indies, for me, like you gotta let these people go home with something. Like these people have paid their hard-earned money to come to this show, whether it's in a nice little building or like a really old building with bad chairs, they're there to watch some wrestling and they're there to have a good time. So always make them leave with something, make them leave like, wow, that guy was really good, or like, screw that guy, he screwed over my favorite guy, that's what pro wrestling is all about to me.
Yeah, again, any facet of entertainment, any facet of just pop culture, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's reflected in pro wrestling, right? Like, if we're at war, especially in North America, right? If we're at war with a particular land or what have you, usually the heel is from that invading land and what have you,
Yeah.
right? Not so much anymore, but like you had evil Russians, evil Germans, evil
Right.
Japanese, what have you. I mean, none more evident on the other side of the pond than Ricky Dozan, right? Ricky
Yeah.
Dozan, I mean, I mean, depending on where you stand with it, right? The World
Hmm.
War II and how Japan fell, right, in terms of nationalistic pride, everything that has happened. I mean, like Hiroshima and Nagasaki haven't recovered fully, you
Right.
know, right? So like he puts himself as somebody who is the Japanese hero. They're
Right.
bringing in Gaijin, right? Foreign
Hmm.
invaders, like I mean, Invader or what's it? Not Mr. Wrestling. God, I forgot his name. He has the old school. He has a God. No, Dick Bear, the Destroyer.
Hey,
Which
yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah, which is funny because his mask was literally his wife's girdle,
Yeah.
and and he cut eyelets out of and what have you. But like that's it, and it bridges that gap and what have you. And you got like a sense of nationalistic pride, and he drew ratings like nobody's business. And the JWA was just my goodness, what it
Yeah.
stood for, and the fact that Antonio Inoki, who would go on to found New Japan, and Giant Baba, who was a baseball player, and
Yeah.
you know ended up founding All Japan Pro Wrestling, which are still in existence to this day, two of the most influential pro wrestling promotions and combat sports
Right.
promotions, right? Ever, right? And that all comes from Ricky Ozan. And fun enough, with Ricky Ozan,
Yeah.
he is South Korean. I mean, North Korean, right?
Yeah.
He's North Korean by birth. Was ostracized and whatever, but he takes
Yeah.
the mantle for Japan. It wasn't found out until decades after he died that
Right,
he was
right.
really North Korean, which is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, no, like it's man, it's like whew, like with foreign heels, it's such like a risky like thing to go with, especially in dark times, like um, you know, like looking at I recently watched the Mr. McMahon documentary and him trying to capitalize on the whole like Iraq and USA wars and everything, all that stuff with Sergeant Slaughter, going from this American sergeant to betraying, the United States and going to Iraq, and having the Sheik and Hogan have the match for the title. Like, but I mean, it sometimes works when it's done correctly. It's not insulting or offensive. Um, but I think foreign heels are some of the best heels because you get the guys who are like with the deep accent, big scary dudes that hate America, and here comes like guys like the Hogan or whatever, like the American heroes that are come out here and to like interrupt the heels and beat the heels. That's again, that's perfect story. Like that's you get this guy who's foreign in American territory and like he's betraying, representing his country, and they're bullying the crap out of him, and he's saying, "Oh, you filthy Americans," whatever, blah 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 blah, and then here comes American babyface.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is, one would argue that it's prying on human sentiment and what have you,
Yeah,
or exploiting it, right? But the thing about it is, the people who boo and cheer and want to buy a T-shirt and want to buy a
yeah, yeah,
seat, an ass in every 18 inches is what Jim Ross says, right? Whether
yeah,
that be at the arena, watching home at TV, gathering with friends, doing a
yeah,
party, an ass in every 18 inches. That's when you know you're hot, right?
right,
So with that all being said, it's like where do these people express themselves if not for pro wrestling,
right,
right? Like where, like it's still there. I mean, you look at the political climate today, right? Those
hmm,
people who support whoever they support, right?
yeah. It's
If
like,
not for those candidates or what have you, where does
yeah,
that go? Do they just
right,
talk about it with their friends kind of
yeah,
quietly, or a social media post or what
right,
have you? Where is it? So giving people an outlet that work 40 plus hours a day and have
yeah,
painstaking jobs, and they're trying to provide for the families, and they have families and
right,
what have you, right? So to give like where they have it, they have an outlet where they can
right,
express these feelings, and it's okay. And there's a
yeah,
bunch of other people that are doing that, and a bunch of other people on the other side that are doing the same thing. And
right,
that is unity.
yeah. For me, like being a professional wrestler, when you're in the indies, for me, I want to give these people something to talk about when they leave. I want them to be like, if they came with their friends, be like, "Oh, dude, you see that? Like, my favorite part was this, or that was crazy, and like, I can't believe he did that." Like, that's what I want. Like, because when I was a fan, I really enjoyed, going to the indie shows or whatever, and being like, "That was my favorite match," or "This was that," something to talk about, and especially, when they're there they want to express themselves because they're to have fun. And that's what I welcome. I welcome fans that just want to, if they want to cheer, you cheer, and they boo, they boo. That's they're fans. They're there to have a good time, and we give them what they want. We have to give them what they want because they're there. Like I said, to, out of money out of their pocket, their time, their weekend, their Saturday, their Sunday, whatever. They can be doing anything else, but they're in this small indie show just have a good time, and that's what pro wrestling's all about. It's giving people to talk about. You see with WWE, for example, these storylines that they cook up and they make, it has people chirping, has people talking about on social media, like, oh my goodness, like, are they gonna go for this? What's gonna happen next? Like, are they gonna, with that's why their storylines are the best. With the whole like bloodline thing, there was like, okay, where we go now? Where are they gonna go from this point? Where are they gonna go from this to that? From Brock to Cody? From the first time Cody went to WrestleMania 39, like he lost. Okay, what are we like? That's what it's all about. Is giving people something to talk about, giving people something to remember, to be like, oh, like this is that's what it sells like a fight. It's you're selling. It's how you sell pay-per-views. It's how you sell tickets to shows. Like that's how you get asses in seats, is making these compelling stories. That give people something to invest in, that are like, okay, they have their busy schedules, but they want to give time to this storyline right here. They want to give time to this so they can watch it on either on TV or go to the arenas. That's what it's all about, is giving the people what they want and what they want to see. You swerve them, you add plot twists, you this and that, which is why to me it's an art. Yes, it's a performance art, but it's also a mixture of being a combat sport, because the storyline is the art of it, the selling of it, the promos, the even in the ring, like the selling, what happens in the match, that's the selling point. And then obviously with the sport, us competing in the match, that's what the athleticism comes in. So to me, that's exactly what pro wrestling is to me.
And again, I think it's the way it should be. So kudos to you for that. Now,
Yeah,
at one point, obviously, you're influenced by your dad. You discover it
yeah,
on your own at 6, right? With a little
hmm,
help from your dad, right? And then
right,
middle school, it's MMA, right? And then you
correct.
start training in Muay Thai. At what point does that kind of like voice in the back of your head? It was like, maybe I want to do that. And where did you go to find a place to do it?
So I was a fan up to middle school, and in my freshman year of high school, I wasn't a rebellious kid in high school. I wasn't a bad kid. I didn't like school. I from literally a freshman year, I realized, like, I don't think I want to do college. I don't think I can. I have a hard time like really paying attention in school. It doesn't interest me. It bores me. Not that I'm a really bad kid, but I was always the class clown. I was always the loud one. So to me, I'm like, okay, time goes by like this. I need to think of something now to do when I graduate. Okay, if I'm not going to be a college student, what am I going to do? And I started getting back into wrestling in freshman year, and I started watching NXT, Black and Gold NXT. And I was really a big mark for Johnny Gargano. And I watched, I believe it was some sort of documentary he did or something, that how he started training for wrestling, and what age he started and everything, and how his dad, I believe, was like, he owned this Italian shop, pizza store, and he would have wrestlers or like wrestling promotions right in the back of the store, and they would let him go onto the ring and everything, and that's how he debuted. So that interested me, and I'm like, I could be a professional wrestler. I think I'd be down to do it. And I was like, what, 14 at the time, and this was before the pandemic happened, right? So I called Santino Bros, wrestling school, because I just searched up online like wrestling schools near me, and there was one around my area, and I was like, cool, I'll give them a call. I called them. They said, oh, like, you have to be 18 or over to train for professional wrestling. And I was like, oh well, I was 14 at the time, wanting to be a pro wrestler, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to wait until I'm 18. So the pandemic hits, and all that happens, and then I I go to this store called the Wrestling Guy store, right? It's in Huntington Park. I
Yep,
went there with my
Huntington
dad.
Park, California. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Shout out to Wrestling
yeah.
Guy Store.
Shout them out, man, because I went to the store once and I went with my dad. We just wanted to buy like some wrestling shirts because we didn't want to wait for the online shipping and all that stuff. So we went and I was talking to the owner and me and him were just talking, hitting it off. And I told him, oh, like I want to be a professional wrestler, like I have been thinking about it. And he connected me with this guy, Hector Canales, who was a wrestler, and he knows a guy whose name is Matt Fuller, who uh, trains people at West Covina. So I got in touch with him, and I started training. I think around 2021, I was 16, and I started training with Matt Fuller in West Covina. Um, and it was just really small lessons. It was me and like some other kid, and it was every Saturday in the morning. I go pay $10, and then we get the ring to ourselves, to train. So I did that for about a month or two, and then I started school again. And I stopped going. I took a little break from it, and I met up with Matt back in the wrestling guy store like a year later, and we catched up. 'Cause I hadn't seen him in a long time since we last trained together. And he told me, oh yeah, like that kind of whatever like didn't go well. We stopped there, and he told me he was training with JTG, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, where do you run your school? Like, oh, up in Carson. And I was like, okay, my my gym is back alive because at the time it died when I stopped caring about or training for it. And so Matt got in touch with me with JTG, and I started going to JTG school. And I started training with Jay and Matt, and I got to meet a lot of workers, guys like Alan Breeze, Can't Stop Jamal, and other guys that I met there. And I trained there for about, I believe, almost like 6 months. And that's how basically I started. I started training there, and then a few months later, I started working more training matches, and then it started to get more serious. Like I could debut soon. So that's how it started. I basically started from as a freshman, wanted to be a professional wrestler at 14, and then I ended up started training around like 16. So
I think that's amazing, man. Like,
yeah,
and a lot of people. I mean, with JTG, like Jason, right? There's a lot. If you know about him and Chad,
right,
like
right.
not even been contracted guys at OVW, and
Hmm.
guys like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk and all of these other like indie darlings were kind of, they had paid contracts and developmental deals out there in Louisville, and then like I think they were literally like working their regular jobs, right?
Yeah,
And Cornette calls him up and he was like, "You're debuting on TV."
right on
Like
television. Yeah,
that night at what is it? Funny enough, CW. You were talking about NXT Black and Gold and what have you. NXT just debuted for the CW network
yeah,
and
yeah,
in World Loud, but the local CW affiliate had OVW television at that time, right? And you
yeah.
just a friend of the podcast who's been on here before, but Aaron Goose Mahoney, who's
Right.
OVW referee and WWE referee, but he was there at that time, and he tells that story too. And it's just like, man, and especially the dearly departed Shad Gaspard.
Yeah,
Like it's just a wild story. So I love that that's the guy that kind of leads you on this path. And also shout out to Matt Fuller, man. Like
yeah. Big, massive shout out to him, man, because he was very, very influential to my career. Very much. He means a lot to me as like as a trainer because he was my first trainer. He was my very first trainer, and he got me into Lucha Pro, the promotion. Um, at the time, J School was starting to like not shut down, but it was kind of like winding down a little bit. And me and Matt were just training, and then he worked for Lucha Pro for years and years, and they needed a referee. And Matt hit me up saying, "Hey, you want to do this refing gig?" I was like, "Absolutely, I'm so down." So Matt got me into Lucha Pro, and I refed them. I ref like I think almost half the matches, half the card I refed. And the next show that I was supposed to ref, I was supposed to bring my gear just in case. At the time, I was like, dude, I don't know, I was so prepared for it. But I had kick pads that I ordered way before and then I had the Muay Thai shorts, the Venom shorts, and then I brought my gear and I debuted. That's when I debuted. And actually, fun fact, I believe is it October? This month I hit my first year of wrestling, my full year of being a professional wrestler. Yeah, October 22nd, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, big shout out to Matt Fuller, man, because he's the one that really, you know, made all these connections for me and got me, to where I'm at today. So shout out to him. And yeah, also big shout out to Jay too, because he was very much like he was a really good trainer to me, He was very like he helped me a lot with my character because he was very big because he's a really big character himself, you know, from his time with Crime Time, with Shad Gaspard and all that stuff. So that's where I learned to be a character, to be myself, you know, and that just shout out to them because I learned a lot from those two, and obviously I met Mr. Paul London at a Coptomania show that I was supposed to work for, and then I met Mr. Aaron Glass Stealing, and they told me about this. They had these shirts on, these Kayfabe Academy shirts on, and they were telling me, "Oh, we're opening up a school in Southgate, which is very very close to where I live," and I did their camp Kayfabe, and that's where we did the showcase. That's where I believe you saw me for the first time, and as they say, the rest is history. So
No, man. I mean, it's so cool, man. I almost get a little teary eyed, right? With you know, uh, obviously Matt wanting to give back to the business, right?
right,
Obviously JTG, right? Jay, kind of. I mean, lucky enough to know Shad a bit. Like we were always
yeah,
like acquaintances and everything, and his, his passing was like wild. It's just wild.
yeah,
You'd never expect that to happen to that guy. Always positive, what have you, but
yeah,
how he
yeah,
passed away, saving his son, like
right.
of all the like wrestler deaths that,
Yeah, it's the most
there's,
Shad death ever. Like it's very much him. That's very much him. The way he went, it's very tragic and sad, but like that's the Shad way to go. Like
yeah,
saving his son, that's that story to me. Like that was one of the deaths. Like it got to you not because like it's Shad who passed away, but it's like the way it happened. It was like this man died a hero, like a real hero. Like that's
yeah,
a real superhero right there. Like they say, dads are our superheroes, and that was the best example of it.
absolutely. But, Jay and Chad would do that, man. I remember, you know, go being on Shad's timeline on one of the social media
Yeah,
deals and whatever, and I'm still there. It's kind of cool just to
yeah, yeah,
look back and what have you. But he would, like if he and Jay were out in Kentucky, you know, all of a sudden there's this little kid. What?
yeah,
Brian Pillman? Wait, Brian Pillman has a son? Oh, Brian
yeah,
Pillman's a son that's trained to be a pro wrestler? Like, it's like the best thing ever because, again, for me, he was one of my favorites. Even like the Flying Brian deal, the first WCW Monday Nitro at the Mall of America in Minnesota, right,
yeah,
is a WCW Light Heavyweight Championship match between Flying Brian Pillman and Jushin Thunder Liger. And again,
yeah,
Liger's in the Hall of Fame. Pillman
yeah,
should be in the Hall of Fame for about all intents and purposes or what have you.
right,
But like, talk about like he went from Flying Brian, smiley babyface or whatever, and then when him and Austin as the
oof,
Hollywood Blondes, I was young enough to
yeah,
just watch them work. And it wasn't very long what they had, but like
right,
watch those guys work. I still do like the
yeah,
old school
yeah, yeah,
movie,
yeah,
because it's so great. It's so great, and then what those guys became, and man, I was so excited when Pillman got signed. Like, and how masterful, he played WCW,
yeah,
ECW, and WWF against each other, and then they had a
right,
big old press conference at Titan
yeah,
Towers. Like, this is like the guy, man.
yeah,
And yeah, unfortunately, he was so banged up or whatever. But again, like these are things that Jason and Shad would do if and wrestle every indie show, like
Yeah.
whatever, just giving back, and would show up like, an hour or so before, whatever, anybody that, you know, Shad's deal was almost full, right? Of like stuff,
Right.
like
Right.
you need tape, you need whatever, and not to
Yeah. Yeah.
expect anything of it, whatever. They would just do stuff. So I love that you kind of learned under that. And then Paul London, and you mentioned Compton
Oh
Mania.
yes.
Shout out to one Sean Black of Compton Mania and the whole crew
Yeah.
there. Man, that's just a cool show. I grew up in Inglewood, California for the most part when we came
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
LA, and Compton and Watts and all of those things. Like even on a world stage has been pretty nefarious for various
Yeah.
reasons, right? So the fact that he basically made it prideful. And speaking of first shows, I believe I was at the first show it was Inglewood adjacent, right? South
Yeah.
LA. It was at a church and what have you. But you look at, the a young Tyler Bateman was there.
Yeah.
A young Ruby Reyes, I believe, wrestled. Who now she's Rena Del Rey in WoW. Man, there's so many guys and girls on that card, and you look back and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh man, that was cool. And Sean Black, wanting, much like me, grew up at Inglewood kid and
Yeah.
wanting
Yeah.
to bring prestige to it. So shout out
Right.
to Compton Mania and Sean.
Yeah. Sean Black. Big shout out to him because I recently did his promotion amped up. I believe back in, I want to say July. um he we did this like festival in the like a block party in Inglewood, and I love that because I grew up around like that county, the LA County, the Compton, the Inglewood, the Hawthorne. That's where I grew up, like, so for me to give back to like my community that I see as my community, that it's a great honor, and yeah, going back to like to Jay and Shad, like those, like what you just said is stuff that Jay taught me under my, like, for the what 2 years that I was training under him. He taught me a lot about respecting, because he loved the business. He loves it, and he always taught us always give back to always, do ring crew, help around the best you can. And he was always telling us like all these stories about what he did to make it to towns and everything. So, and he gave me a few rides, to training and everything. So, shout out to Jay for being that kind of guy. And Paul London is someone who I see as a mentor. Like training under Paul has been like the best like experience ever. Like that whole Kayfabe Academy run by Paul, like to me, like meeting Paul in Comptomania, it was pretty crazy. Like I was like, okay, this is starting to get a little crazy in my career. And when I was told about Kayfabe Academy, I jumped right on it. I was like, I'm in it. And we did the the camp for, I believe it was like 7 days, and we did the Kayfabe Battle Royal, and I ended up wrestling Ty Williams, later on in that night. And so, and when he finally opened up his school, it was like it was a blessing for me, because it was like down the street from my house, and it's Paul Lynn, and he's a great teacher. Like he's another guy who's like, he has so much experience and so much that he's learned and he did, you know, working for like, all kinds of wrestling promotions and WWF, and he's just teaching us this. He's putting it into our brains, and I have learned a lot from Paul, and I think Paul has been one of like the best teachers I've ever had, and shout out to him because I really had a good time, having a good time training under him. And even like when we're not training, like if I need help or advice on something, I've texted him before. He's given me his number to like, hey, like, text me if you need anything, like anything. And that to me, that's a true like teacher, someone that's like, he's not just here for money or just to take all some random kids' money to teach him wrestling. He's here because he genuinely loves wrestling. He wants to, keep keep this going, and he teaches it, and he cares about it. And the two K showcases that we've done have been by far like the best, times of my life. Doing the both battle royals and then doing all those matches. Yeah, it's been really fun.
No, but it's funny because I mean, an era before YouTube, right? And you would
Yeah,
hear, like, for me, it was the Aftermax, the PWI, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the
right,
wrestlers, or whatever, and just finding out that there's other wrestling out there, right? And I would
right.
always hear about, like this TWA and Michaels has a school, and
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that time, like we hadn't seen him in a wrestling capacity since he
right.
lost to Austin, right? And
Yeah,
at that WrestleMania with Mike Tyson. And from
yeah.
like these inklings of like, oh man, he's coming back and whatever. But then when you look at it, right, all the things that he did, and I mean, I believe the head trainer was Skyday, right?
I think so. I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, you want to talk about a guy that I mean he's not really like a household name, but if you ask any of those guys, from Lance Cade or Michaels or London, like any of those guys that trained and made it to literally the pinnacles of where wrestling can
right.
go, like the work that you see in Danielson is very much Scott A as it was William Regal or
Right.
Johnny Saint and what have you. So like shout out to them, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's opening the doors. And I remember like the first time I met Paul London, it was in Pasadena, California, where my former wife used to work and whatever. And I was just like, is that Paul
Yeah.
London? Is that Paul London? And I was kind of timid, like this is him in real life, whatever, years away from, like the WWE kind of part of his
Yeah.
career, even like years removed from the the shoot interviews,
Right.
um so I didn't know what to make of him. And
Right.
one of the reasons I fell into MMA more so at a particular time in my life is like I had a really not great encounter with Randy Orton at a gas station in Bakersfield, California, and I
Oh
was like,
boy.
I'm gonna not watch wrestling as much. And but
Yeah.
the week later, um, Shane Carwin, former UFC interim
Yeah.
champion, is doing a signing at Max Muscle, right where I work, and like that guy just like he got up for everybody. He showed up 2 hours early to sign
Right.
autographs and left 2 hours late. Made sure that everybody felt wanted, and I was like, this MMA thing, I'm gonna stick with it. And it was still
Yeah.
like UFC, right? Like
Right.
not and everybody that wasn't UFC was like no holds barred, NHB or whatever, right? So like for Paul, right, didn't know me from anything, he couldn't have been more inviting, right? And just like
Yeah.
whatever. I was like, could we take a picture? And he's like, yeah, but you have to put me in a headlock. And I was like, what? I get to put you in a headlock? And he's like, yeah. So I go for it, what I think it is. And ever the teacher that Paul London is, something that you have seen firsthand and experienced
Yeah.
firsthand, he's like, no, change your grip. And the bit of jujitsu I know, like, I was like, okay, cool, right? Like kind of a
Yeah. Yeah.
karate, right? And I was like, and then we take the picture, and it's just like it was my profile picture on Facebook for many years. So
Yeah.
that's it, right? And then even I don't think I had seen. No, I saw him once at a what's his name? Former Justin Gabriel,
Oh
PJ
yeah.
PJ
Right.
Black, right?
He's like, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and here, hilariously enough, right? Like just how history rears its head or whatever. Uh, Paul London and Brian Kendrick were both at that show,
Oh
and I was
wow.
like, I didn't know they hadn't been talking at that point,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
like, hey guys, would you guys do a picture? And they weren't. They were, like parting the
Right.
Red
Right.
Sea, whatever. But they did it, and whatever. And I thought that there was this like, they're gonna hug or whatever. They're like, hey, cool. And then they part ways again. And I was like, oh, I didn't know, whatever. But like, I
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
have, one of the only pictures of them together post their WWE
Yeah.
run. So that's kind of cool. And then I didn't see him again after that until the Kayfabe show. And it was,
Mhm.
he was such a proud papa. Sean Black was there as well.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, Shiloh Greaves. Shout out to Shiloh, man. That dude, amazing. But and you don't want to get on his bad side, so don't get on Shiloh Greaves. It's a bad side, folks.
Well, I
But
mean, he
y-
he he started the his visionary group. and he's taking my friends with him. So, you know,
Ooh,
all I'm saying is
ooh,
November we got some dates coming up for Comptomania. You know, that's all I'm
oh,
saying. He's gonna pay for what he's done and
oh,
manipulate and
jeez.
brainwash my friends into thinking that he's going to give them opportunities, which is not the case. And I've tried to warn my friends, but they don't listen. So they're going to reap what they sow, as they say, lie in the bed that they make. But that's just that's just for a different
I
discussion.
didn't know I opened a Pandora's box.
You opened up the Pandora's box,
Ooh.
yeah. But hey, we'll talk about that later on. But
Oh,
no,
oh
it's
yeah.
funny you mentioned that story about Paul, like teaching the headlock. That's so funny because that's just the way Paul is, and that's been very helpful actually for me because I had a move set, because I already had been working some shows already, um, but obviously like I wasn't training at the school at the time, so I didn't have ways to improve it. And when Paul saw my strikes, he's like, okay, well, they kind of look like shit, but here's how we can, this is how you can modify it. There's a lot of things that I've changed up in my game because of him, and it's like he's helped me a lot, a lot. He's helped me be more impactful, be more like aggressive, be more like make it look like you're really going for the head, and that's Paul's been just a brilliant teacher, an awesome guy, like an awesome dude to hang out with, and shout out to him.
Absolutely. And I mean, crazy enough as luck would have it, right after that show, and he was again so gracious. Like, I
Right.
love when legends don't know how legendary they are in our
Yeah,
eyes,
yeah.
you know. And Paul is very much that guy. So I at my shoot job, crazy enough, the day after, there's Paul. Because his car had broken down or whatever, or he
Oh
had it in
no.
the shop or whatever, and all they would talk about is you guys. And after,
Right.
like, I got to, have a few words with him after the show, and Aaron and what have you, and how proud of you guys he was. And then asking me again, could have been any Tom, Dick, and Harry, whatever. Did I enjoy the show? You kept on
Right.
doing that to everybody that was there.
Yeah.
Everybody that was there. And then again, 24 hours, less than 24 hours later, I'm here with him, regular deal, almost like a la the time I first met him.
Right.
And he's again beaming, beaming about you guys and how wonderful the process was to train all of you guys. And again, asking me, nobody in the scale, right?
Right. Right.
Did I enjoy the show? And
Yeah.
I was like, well, that be kid. No, like legit. That legit. And but again, you're putting your body on the line, right? Anybody that is in a combat sports field, right? You're putting your body on the line. Like any match could be your last match, right?
Right.
Any fight could be your last fight, right? So to put your body, your mind, body, and soul, and even further your dreams into a person,
Yeah.
right? And to know that they are aware of the responsibility that they're given, and they're going to give you every bit of theirs.
Right. Like for me, my the biggest honor was Paul trusting me with a match. He's only known me for a week. The 7 days that we've been, um, training and the brief meeting that we had, because when we did the Kayfabe, the camp, he set up meetings online to really get to know people, and he entrusted me, and I felt like, yes, I was looking to give you guys, you and like the people that were there a good show, but like I wanted to make Paul proud because he's entrusting a lot in me and in what he's taught, and I'm representing him. I'm representing Paul London. Like I'm representing what he's taught me. So I cannot go out there and screw it up. So I was like, you gotta make this good. And when I learned when Paul was telling me, some words, it was one of the most proudest moments of my very short career that like Paul London, guy who I actually watched growing up and I actually had his figures and I played him in video games, like this guy is giving me his approval. This guy is giving me these words and he's teaching me. I was like, it's such a like mind blowing, baffling thing to me that I'm in this space and I'm in this world where I'm being taught by guys who I grew up watching, and learning a lot from them and picking their brains. So Yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed that show because that was one of my favorite, times. My favorite shows. The both kayfabe, both shows were just, you know, knock out of the park. Really, really good.
Yeah, and again, as people, right? It was I believe it was a weeknight, right? It was
Yeah,
later ish, right, in the
it was
day.
like Thursday. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and like especially we're so fortunate to live in LA. Like there's
right.
if we want entertainment, there's entertainment anywhere.
Anywhere.
Concerts,
Yeah,
punk shows, even taco trucks like that, like there's so much, right? It's so plentiful, right?
right.
So to have people show up and it was a packed house. This is not hyperbole. It was a packed house,
Yeah, yeah,
at Rocket Fitness out there in Southgate, California. Shout out to Rocket Fitness. Um, and to basically have everything that we came for fulfilled, and
hmm
then also for you guys to give it back. Right. So, like, we're
yeah,
here on a Thursday night. We want to see a wrestling show. We want to see
right.
people fighting for their lives because we're out here fighting for our lives. We're fighting for our families. So, if I'm going to go on a Thursday night, damn it, those people better be fighting, right? So, and we gotta everybody's expectations were not only met, but I feel like fortified even more so. And again, that's every bit of Paul and Aaron,
Right.
like that whole crew. Again, Sean Black was there, not just
Yeah,
as
he
an
was.
observer, but like ready to work. We had Fred Gabriel, Freddie Havoc. Shout out to Freddie. We had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Midnight Animal, Eddie Weiss,
Eddie
both
Vice.
friends
Yeah,
of the show. Yeah. Uh, all there, and Eddie wrestled, what have you. But like again, when you pull all of those experiences that each individual has, and they're there that night, and you're, like after a 7 week kind of arduous deal, like trying to make your dreams happen, it's got to be kind of cool to get that back.
yeah. Like both kayfabe shows were complete success in terms of the crowd. The first time around, we had a big crowd. The second time, Rooked Fitness had actually moved out, and so we had a lot more space, which means it was a bigger crowd. And I don't know, I can't really pick a favorite, because I love both. But if I was to pick a favorite, I think it would be the second one. The second
Okay.
one. The second one for me is my favorite because it was like we were fully of school and we had, I think 3 or 4 months straight of training, and we prepared so much for it, and we were so like prepared, and I got to. Um, this is when my former best friend Adrian Aries, before he switched onto the visionary side, started training because me and him met back in J school, but he had stopped training for a while, and so I convinced him to come back into training, into wrestling. So I got to tag with him in the main event, like that was, or like in the co-main event, and that shows that was my favorite because it was such a fun time. The Rookie Rumble, like the Royal Rumble, like that was fun. Like, I came out number two, lasted throughout the final three. And that's me my favorite one. I love both. Both have been really great. Love them, but I think the second one's just barely gets over my favorite. But yeah, like I said, like that was our point. Especially for the second time around, the second show, we were like, you know, we want to knock this out the park because we need to prove that like the first one was a success, but the second time we really want to deliver because we know this is going to be a bigger crowd and the expectations are only getting higher. And we were going out there like the mindset of like, okay, some of us have experience, some of us aren't experienced, some of us do need time, but like the fact that, and shout out to them, shout out to all my kayfabe friends, like all of them that came in training for the first time in kayfabe, and they went out there and they delivered. Like I was proud, because I me and GTE and Bruno are like the ones that are like experienced within that, because you have some show experience, and these guys who came in, they're new, they were rookies and they had never trained or done any kind of wrestling training. So in the short time they did, was I believe 4 months into the next show, they went out there and they did. Dude, I couldn't be more proud of them as friends, because I was, like you said, I believe in the beginning, was like, we want to support our friends, like I was very proud of, the Cooper brothers. Shout out to them. Like Cortez and Marlon, all these guys. Like shout out to them because like they and Marky, like they went out there and they had the crowd here, man. Like they were hot for every single one of them, and they delivered. And I couldn't be any more proud of it. And yeah, like that's why for me the cycle is my favorite.
Yeah, everybody has their favorites.
Yeah.
Speaking of favorites, right?
Right.
Because we're going to circle back to the shallow deal, but before we go into that, what are you watching now? What are you influenced by? I feel like you are under the influence of giants, right? Brett and so many others that you've mentioned,
Right.
Sean, Paul, right?
Right. Of course.
And getting to train under them. So like in your wrestling diet, right? As you're kind of, honing your style and what have you, not being, like you said, a cheap facsimile of people, but what's influencing you? What's piquing your interest now?
Well, obviously, when I became a wrestler, I wanted to take my mind out of being a fan because yes, I'm still a fan. Obviously, I'm still watching the product and watching it. But one of the things that Matt taught me was switching from the fan perspective to a worker perspective, to watch it, to study. Like watch all the pay-per-views that come up and study them, and even the old stuff. So for me, because obviously like my favorites are going to say the John Cena's and all that stuff. Like you said, DX. That's just because you're a fan. But as a worker, I studied a lot of Brett, a lot of some of Mr. Perfect, some of Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. Love this intensity. Love this, his ringing ability. Kurt Angle was another guy who I studied, and uh, learning from CM Punk, like as well, like his style as well. Obviously, being a modern fan, so I study a lot of him. So I'm always just watching wrestling just to study it. I'm always watching matches. I'm watching how, ooh, like, cause that was, oh, okay, that's how you transition to this. Maybe I'll implement it, And I also watch a lot of Bryan Danielson. Like his technical abilities are like bar none. So I'm always studying these guys. Um, and Paulina too. I've been watching much more of Paulina's matches, and I'm like, wow, this guy was, really good. So I'm always studying Paul stuff too. So these are the guys that I really like. I study that I'm watching them to see their work. I'm watching them to see how they operate, how they do moves, and how my style of wrestling is inspired by them. And how can I tweak it? I use some of like Punk's move set, but like I add my own twist to it. Because you don't want to be a full carbon copy of it.
Right.
It's okay. Like I was, it's okay obviously to be inspired by it, but if I'm gonna do the running knee or whatever he does the bulldog, I'm like, okay, what's something that I can add that's me? So I'll do the running knee. Oh, here, neck breaker, perfect, boom. That's something that I came up with on my own. I was like, okay, I do this thing, cool, knee and then neck breaker. That's something I came up on my own. And I'm always like, okay, I'm gonna imitate the style, but how can I make it me? Like how can I make it about like how can I add my own flavor to it? Because obviously every wrestler has been inspired by their favorites. You know, like they've all been inspired by the British Bulldogs, by the Macho Mans, by the Bretts, by everyone. So they've added their own flavor to it. So those are the guys that I really enjoy being inspired by. Because especially Brett, like we said, he just executed things perfectly. But yeah, those are a few of the guys, and I just watch wrestling. Like to really study the good and the bad of it. Paul is something that always tells us is like watch good wrestling, also watch bad wrestling. You can really learn from both because when you watch bad wrestling, you realize that's not what to do. That's what they messed up. When I watch wrestling and I see where they mess up, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. They didn't do this right. So I learned like not to do that. So for me, I'll watch all kinds of wrestling. Whether it's good or bad, it's always, important to learn from both because you can really learn,
No, absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned both, obviously with everything that happened with Benoit, it's a really tough, both from a
Yeah.
fan, it's not a good
Right.
deal either way, right? And that's putting it very lightly, right? But you
Yeah.
also mentioned Danielson, and I feel like in many ways, Danielson got the career that Benoit if not for the horrific
Right.
tragedy, what
Right.
have
Right.
you. Like almost a carbon copy of
Almost. Yeah.
Chris. Oh, like I said, almost right, an homage,
Yeah.
right, of Dynamite Kid and what have you. And I think like you know Danielson being influenced by Benoit heavily and what have you. Obviously, not taking anything away from him because his character work, everything like that, and you
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
a lot of it in Ring of Honor. Where he,
Right.
drops the title and then like goes away for an extended period of time and comes back shaved head. He's like that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
burgundy, regal inspired,
Right.
tights and
Right.
boots and everything like that. And he comes back, big old beard and bald head and a
Yeah.
cloak and whatever. It was there, but like really, like if there's a lot of not fun things about the competition NXT whatever, but like I feel like he learned his character work on that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then getting fired and like
Right.
those things, they're taking a negative into a positive, and that's it. And I like and Benoit had already been there, right? Dynamite had already been there, and you can make an argument that the career Benoit had is because Dynamite didn't get it
Right.
right, and
Yeah.
and the way that the business moved, especially post the WWF and Vince McMahon steroid trial, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and guys got smaller and smaller, and what have you. There's no doubt that like if coming in 20 years after the fact, Dynamite would be probably a world champion.
Right.
Benoit
Right.
obviously got it, and then Danielson there, and those guys, Pillman, like you look at a lot of those guys that were deemed shorter or smaller in stature, but geez, like they could have,
Yeah.
Owen. Oh my goodness, Owen would
Right.
be the top guy everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah. 100%. That's what I mean. It's like these are some of the best to ever do it. These like guys like Owen. Like Owen is criminally underrated in my books. He's one of the best workers I've ever seen. You know, and like the character work is also something I have to study because it's like I studied the wrestling, but also like the characters, the guys who go out there and they're like they get over because they're just fascinating people to get invested to. You know, I study a lot of promos. Like, what's the right way to do a promo? Oh, just be yourself. Like the biggest thing about a promo for me is like, don't talk at the people, talk to them. You know, and delivery is very important in promos. Like you don't want to put up a promo voice that's not you. Like I know, like I didn't want to, you don't want to do this whole like make your voice deeper or make it sound different because that's not you. Like I don't have a deep voice. I don't have a intimidating voice. I talk like this, but I have a certain way of speaking. So when I do promos and I post them on my Instagram, you can see it's like me right now, just talking. And I'm just like, oh, this coming date, me this against this guy, boom. That's what you know, I'm always looking. I'm always studying all these guys, all these the characters they're selling, because you need to study every single part of their game and make them great. The selling, the intensity, how much effort they put into it, and all that. That's what inspires me. All the character works, the promos, the in-ring ability. So for me, like guys like them, guys who aren't just in-ring guys who have character, guys
Oh yeah.
who make people feel something. Like people that have gotten over because like the fans just are really attracted to them by their character. So that's what I've taken a lot of my inspiration from.
Oh yeah, I mean, and even further, to me, Arn Anderson. Again,
Yeah,
one of the reasons why Dangerous Alliance is one of my favorite factions ever. I think one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest, is Arn.
yeah,
Right? I mean, we don't get a Four Horsemen if they don't do that combined promo where of Tully getting time, Flair getting time, Arn getting time, whatever. They just have it together. Like, and that
yeah,
Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Like, you listen to his show now, and it's just like a wealth of knowledge. But he's a guy who
right.
grew up on Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he
Yeah,
didn't go on dates, famously, if it was on Saturday night because wrestling was on.
yeah,
Like, and that guy William Regal is another guy. Oh my God,
yeah,
like, to me, he, as humble as he is, he won't tell you. William Regal is probably the most perfect archetype for a pro wrestler in the
100%. Yep.
British, kind of catch can world of sport style,
Yeah.
linking the carnivals to current day. But then watch his character work, how he
Yeah.
winches his face and what like he makes you feel, and somebody who's open to all types of wrestling. That's why he's had a career, much like Arn. Like for the he's never not worked in pro wrestling,
Yeah.
right? There's a reason why. There's like like it's just amazing. Like and even a guy like, oh my goodness, Billy Robinson. You watch Billy Robinson,
Yeah.
and you might say his character work is whatever, but for the time, and him and Vern Gagne in the AWA, you're like, man, geez, like and when I feel down about myself, I will just watch a wrestler's wrestler on YouTube. I'm like, fuck it, I gotta be on my shit. Like I
Yeah.
need to be doing some neck bridges or something. I don't know, like whatever the quintessential
Yeah.
podcaster version of that, but like that helps me out. But again, very character work oriented as well as work rate oriented. Those guys, in every
Yeah.
sense of the word. Dean Malenko,
Oh,
Jesus, Dean Malenko.
Dean
You
Malenko,
believed
man.
he was the Iceman. You believed he was the man of a
Yes.
thousand holds.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
When I was a fat kid growing up in Inglewood and whatever, like my mom was like, pretend, this is my mom's
Yeah.
Fijian accent, pretend you're one of the wrestlers you watch. Like, pretend
Yeah.
you're it. And those two wrestlers were Brett and Dean. I mean, to the
Yeah.
extent where I adjusted my wrist for no other reason but to be the
Right.
Iceman. I even shot in my neck. Later, you
Yeah.
find out that Dean was in an accident at 16 in Tampa. Like and his neck got
Yeah.
fused early on. But like I carried myself like Dean Malenko, and that gave me
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
Taz is another one. Make you
Yeah. Dude.
believe, man.
Yeah. That's so funny because like that was definitely me with Punk. Because I was so fan. Punk's one of my all-time favorites, and um, I was so like inspired by the way he was. It was so controversial, with his pipe bomb and the way he went against like the authorities and all that stuff. So when I was a freshman in high school, like I wanted to be like CM Punk, like this misfit, like not don't fit in kind of guy. So I literally I tried, you know, doing the slit back hair and having this like I don't care attitude that like not I fight against injustice. People when I see something that's not right, I'm always going against it. That was me for the better part of like my first high school years, where I was like I want to be like Punk, I want to be like just I don't care. Like I don't care. Like I talk back to people or like I just very much punk attitude. That like I know my worth and that for good for better or worse. Like that was me in high school. I was very much inspired by his character. Like just like you said, like you grew up in England where you would do all this, adjust your wrist and all that stuff. I would always, be rolling my wrist like this. Always be, like I'd be sitting crisscross applesauce like he would, just randomly like in P, I'd be sitting down, I would like write drug free on my knuckles, like I even wanted to lip piercing at some point because of I was like just I just wanted to be like him. And that's funny because like as fans we grew up by these characters like wanting to be like them and we imitate them, much like how kids growing up they want to be like Spider-Man, right? They do the web shooting, they do the hanging, or they want to be like Iron Man. Like they do like they mimic all their moves and what they do as their character. And for us in wrestling, that's what we do. There's a lot of guys are inspired by like Steve Austin. Have that like the same thing, don't care attitude and scream at your boss. Like who doesn't want to beat up their boss the way that Steve Austin did? You know what I mean?
Even your
So that
bosses wanted when they were younger. Your bosses
yeah,
now
right,
wanted to beat
right,
up their bosses, not realizing it's just like the corporate person that listens to Rage Against the Machine. You're like, wait, you
yeah,
you realize you're the machine, right?
yeah, yeah,
You realize you're the boss, right? Like, what? Whoa, okay. But again, it doesn't have to make sense. Sometimes it makes
right,
money, and then again, that kind of Brett, Calgary influence, right? Like the
right,
sons of Brett. Look at the guys drawing money now, right? That were
yeah,
Brett influence, right? You
right.
got Punk. I'm a Punk guy. You got the Revival, FTR, man. Like, and
Heavy Summer Brett, yeah,
yeah, they are. When I go for wrestling, if they're on, I don't care what the show is. I'm watching that. and
Yeah,
FTR, man. Like I don't know if some steam has been kind of dimmed, right? Like
yeah,
it's kind of dimmed down, but like they're influenced by everybody that we talked about, at
right,
the
right.
Midnights and the Rock and Roll Express and whatever, and they work like that, and they're not breaking their
Yeah,
necks. Like it's a fight, no fists, just no flips, just fists.
no,
When there
just a
was a
fist fight.
rival, yeah, like that's it. That makes you, and they're not the biggest guys, but man, it, you want those guys in a bar fight. If
Yeah, of
chick
course.
goes
Yeah.
down, that's it.
You-
Like I want,
Yep.
Dawson and oh man, I call them their WWE
It's
names, but
the Cash Wheeler and Dax
Dax,
Harwood.
yeah, Dax, and and I mean, you guys, if you haven't, you're right for the short time that we had it, but
Right.
like that podcast with Dax, man, it's just you just see how much he loves the business, and
Loves it.
like
Loves it.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
absolutely.
just such a
So
shame. Like AEW's had the fortune of having the most brilliant minds in their locker rooms. Dean Malenko, Mark Henry, William Regal, all these
Paul
guys.
White, Arn
Paul White. They have
Anderson,
Arn
Wi-
Anderson. They've had
William
so
Regal,
many mm, just
Ace
amazing
Steel.
minds. Ace Steel at one point too. They've had so many brilliant minds. It's like it's just that's the one thing about AEW that's like they think that because just because they've done this on their own, they don't need the veterans, advice. But that's false. Like I've always said, like no matter how far you get in your career, you're always gonna keep learning. You're always learning. You're never gonna stop learning. No matter how experienced you get in the business, no matter how far you make it, you're always gonna be learning. There's always be someone that's been doing this longer than you, that knows better and that you need to hear from. Which is why I think NXT performs well because in the PC they have all the brilliant minds in the world that are teaching this new generation of wrestlers, and they're giving them this experience that they need, which is why I believe AEW needs to do more. Listen to guys like Mark Henry, listen to Paul White, listen to Regal. I know he's not there
Jerry
anymore, but like
Lynn,
Jerry Lynn as well. Jerry Lynn
Jim
was there.
Ross, and Tony Schiavone.
Jerry Moss. These are guys that are like have such their brain is full of so much knowledge. Why not pick at it? Guys like FTR and Punk when he was in AEW, they picked their brains, and that's why their FTR was one of the best tag teams. Like we said, they may be a little dimmed down, but they're still one of the best tag teams just because they're so inspired by like guys like Brett. They have that old school like '80s look that like they look like they could kick ass in a bar fight. You know?
Mhm. Oh, one of my I mean, it just in aesthetics. Speaking of like kind of AEW tag teams. Well, shout out to the Acclaimed, right? Shout out to the
Yeah.
Acclaimed. I love them. But also, just in looks, right? Fucking Butcher and Blade. Holy crap, dude!
Yeah.
Like those two. Also, they don't look like anybody else. Dude,
Right.
you want to take
Yeah.
those guys into a bar fight? Fucking
Yeah.
the House of Black. Any one of those guys, you're taking in a
Yeah.
bar
Like
fight, right? The
right.
Outrunners. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
Outrunners. Oh, I love everything about them. It's
Go
just,
ahead. Yeah.
huh?
Go ahead, Austin. Then go ahead. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, man. I every bit. Again, I grew up in the '80s wrestling and whatever,
Yeah.
right? So like, they I don't think they're doing a parody. That's not what they're doing, right?
Mhm.
They're doing the most authentic version of themselves, right? Almost like the Vaudevillains did in
Right.
NXT,
Right.
right? With Leva Bates, the librarian slash,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, Blue Pants, right? They're like those guys. Like they're that guys. That is the wrestling that they grew up on, right?
Right.
Now, yes, it is a character, but you mean to tell me that they don't believe in what they're doing?
Yeah.
They believe in everything. And I remember like the first time that they appeared like on AEW Dark or whatever. And
Yeah.
again, much like for me, much like saying you, and I'm not trying to give you the shine because you're here, but like you just know somebody has it, right?
Right.
Uh, and you're just like, who are these guys, right? And like
Yeah.
they're barely 30s and they're balding and bleach blonde
Yeah.
hair and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think they wrestled like separately, and then they put them together, and then now they have a gal, I can't remember her name, but like, see, like that whole ensemble, it had to come together the way it did, and that now like AEW is really like they got their first T-shirt.
Right.
They're the vignettes. They are deep
Mhm.
into the vignettes in a
Yeah.
time where I don't think AEW does many vignettes, and that was to me like my favorite part of '80s wrestling, both WCW and WWF. Right,
Right.
where they had the vignettes, and you knew who these people were before they even stepped foot in the ring. Right, so now they're doing it, and uh, shout out to the good brother Giancarlo, because
Yeah.
he's somebody who worked on a lot of WWE stuff and all,
Right.
and then once he's not in WWE anymore, he goes over to AEW, and he might have been the guy with Darby Allin and Edge,
Yeah.
right? Filming that stuff, and
Right.
and I want to believe in my heart of hearts that the good brother is
Yeah.
filming a lot of those outrunner stuff. If you look at Giancarlo Ditamo's taste in wrestling and what the outrunners are doing,
Yeah.
you can put the two and two together.
The two together. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just love it. And like it's how like the Betamax, you know, type of presentation of
Right.
the vignettes and whatever. You believe you're in the '80s, and if here's a generation or two of people removed from it that don't remember
Yeah.
that. So this is new
Right.
to them, and I can't tell you that you cannot be absolutely enthralled at what you see in the Outrunners. Timber
Right.
Floyd and like they're just great. They're just great, and it
Yeah.
doesn't even matter. I can't tell you one move that they have. One move
Right. Right.
cannot.
That's yeah. That's like obviously in AEW. There's a lot of guys who I wish would use more. That would really help that company a lot more. Like there's guys like Wardlow. Wardlow's a guy that needs more. He needs like, cause that's a you have a monster right there.
Yeah.
Like if he goes to WWE, he's gonna face up against Gunther. And Gunther is one of my favorite wrestlers because
Oh yes.
he is someone that's like you can put him in any era of wrestling with the 60s, 70s, 80s, like territory days,
You can go to the
you know,
50s.
put
Him
him
and
back in
Luthez
yeah,
draws
put him
money
with
anywhere.
him and Luthez, him and um oh what's his name? Oh goodness, I forget his name.
Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous George, yes, Gorgeous
Yeah,
George, there you go.
yeah.
Him and Gorgeous George put him up against, like guys like that.
Buddy
Like
Buddy Rogers
Buddy Rogers,
originally.
Harley Race, Ric Flair, any era you want to put that man is like just the perfect wrestler. The big foreign dude that he can just beat the crap out of anyone and it's believable and it looks believable. His hits look like he's looking to kill people,
He
especially when work
is.
guys like when he's like working guys like Ilya Dragunov, like he
Oh,
looks like he's
Ilya.
really wants to kill him, and that's why Gunther's one of my favorites who I studied, like because he's just so like aggressive, he's so impactful with his moves, like and his character work is just brilliant because he's not just a wrestler, he's also a great character because his promos are really good. He has
Yeah,
that that Austrian accent that
and
really
he looks
shines
the
through,
part.
and he just looks the part, you know. But yeah, like I said, that's what you know that's what I really appreciate about some guys in AEW that really care about it, and they realize, okay,
Mhm.
I'm a big dude, I'm gonna do big dude things, like in WWE, like all the big guys they do all the big boy moves, and that's why I tell a lot of my guys in kayfabe that are like big guys are like, I tell them like, you're a big guy, you're a big dude, like use that to your advantage. If you're working someone smaller than you, well, I'm like a pest, like a fly, because
Yeah,
you're a giant. You're a bigger person. You're easier to look like a wrestler. You're easier to separate from fans to a wrestler. Because you're a big guy. You're either big and beefy or big and with muscles. So I think that's for me, for big men especially, like they need to really impose their power. Really show off their size. So.
yeah. No, 100%. Eric Bischoff, man, he was like, because there was some kind of I can't remember what AEW wrestler, it could have been Satnam, could have been Lance Archer,
Yeah.
after he got hurt. Like, why
Right.
is that guy doing backflips? Why is
Yes. That's
Luchasaurus
yeah.
doing backflips?
I would
They
never understand
tower
that.
over everyone. He's a giant.
Yeah.
Well, can you name one Andre the Giant move? I
Nope.
can. I've been watching a long time. I mean, after Andre passed away or whatever, but still, like,
Yeah.
long time. Can't remember anything he did. He's a
Yeah.
giant. You bill him as a giant. And if you can't bill him as a giant, that's your problem. That's your problem
Yeah.
as a promoter. You're supposed to promote this guy and any other
That's yeah.
person with it, And man, I could go on a whole kind
Yeah.
of
No.
soapbox.
Yeah. Because it's like I just I never understood why big men like do flip stuff. Like that's not you. Like use your size. If you're wrestling, a smaller guy, be the bigger dude. Like be scary. Use the use the big boots, the big slams. That's what makes attractions. And that's why I tell all the guys. Some a few of the guys that are like big men. So I'm like, dude, you have the size. Use it to your advantage.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And just really quickly, I mean, we were talking about like the people in NXT right now, and there was a post, I guess post match, post event deal with like I guess it's Mackenzie Mitchell, maybe not Mackenzie
Mhm.
Mitchell, but one of their interviewers and the newly crowned and christened NXT two-time champion and Trick Williams and what have you. And
Uh-huh.
CM Punk enters the fray and what have you. But Trick was, like shouting out people, and he shouted out Terry Taylor. You could say what you
Yeah.
want about Terry Taylor as a person. I mean, there's people pro and con, whatever. But
Right.
like
Right.
Terry Terry Taylor's work. It's almost synonymous with like Jim Ross, right?
Right.
From Mid South and Bill Watts, and into WCW, and then WWF. You could talk about Red Rooster. You could talk about the gimmick all you want. Watch the guy in
Yeah.
the ring. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
Norman fucking Smiley, another quintessential perfect wrestler. That if he was maybe 3, 4, 5 inches taller, he'd be a draw everywhere,
Oh,
right?
100%.
Oh
100%.
man, but he did it in Mexico. He's a former CMLL heavyweight
Yeah.
champion, right? But it's just like that guy is teaching people. That guy is teaching people in Tampa. Like it's like I love that, And again, as representation matters. So as somebody who's on the darker side of things, and also from a British Commonwealth, man,
Right.
I looked at
Yeah.
Norman Smiley and I was like, it me. He's me,
Yeah.
and he can fucking stretch anybody. I was kind of going on a tangent about like Brett. Like when I was young,
Yeah.
I wanted to be Brett and Owen, but like
Right.
in my older years and whatever, I want to be Stu grappling with a fucking bear and have
Yeah.
a bunch of wrestling kids. Like maybe not a bunch. I have one kid
Yeah.
not into wrestling, So, but
Yeah.
even still, like but Norman Smiley was that guy. Like I want to be more like Norman Smiley in the latter part of his career, man. What's his stuff in WCW as a hardcore champion and screaming Norman
Right.
Smiley? You can't tell me that isn't great character work. Like
Yeah.
you see touches of Norman Smiley in what Art Truth is doing it now. Whether you can't tell me that wasn't influenced a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
That's one of the big myths I think from what one of the big things about like pro wrestling back in the day in a world where like you know it was heavily taken over by big men with big muscles and all these 6 foot giants. There was the guys like Guerrero, Benoit, Di Malenko, Rey Mysterio Jr.
Perry
You know,
Saturn.
Perry Saturn. Like these guys were smaller on the smaller side, on the cruiserweight side, but they interacted with that kind of audience because like, wow, like that guy is like shorter than, you know, Hulk Hogan or Kevin Nash, but man, he's so quick, he can move. It's so impressive, you know, which is one of the misfortunes about like, the early days of wrestling, WWF, WCW, where they just wanted to use big men. Because for marketing, for TV sales, they had like the smaller guys that were arguably some of the best workers ever, you know. And there are some good big men, but some of them, aren't workers like that. They just have the good body. But there are those guys who are like cruiserweight guys, shorter or smaller in size that were just, which is why like I think as a modern fan, like Punk and Danielson really opened that door for the indie guys, the guys who came from the indies, guys who were seen as not future WWE superstars at all. Guys like Kevin Owens, guys like Sami Zayn, those are guys who were like would never make it into the WWE system, you know, because they didn't look like the superstar that the WWE was looking for, you know, and that was Punk and Danielson opened that gate for them,
Oh yeah.
because here come CM Punk and Danielson who are both not 6'5" giants, muscular John Cena lookalikes. They're smaller dudes that came from the Indies, from Ring of Honor, but man, like they made it. They became champions. They became the best in WWE in a time where they were still trying to really put all those bigger guys in the picture. And then after that era, in comes the Owens, the Sammys, the Rollins, the all those guys that would have never made it into the WWE back then are in it successfully now because of them, So that's why for me, that's why I'm influenced by them, because like they're roughly my size. I'm not a big dude, I'm like average 6 foot in height, but like I'm not a big muscular guy. I'm still a little skinny. So those guys, use their weight as as a tool with the strikes, really impactful strikes and really impactful submission hold. Because I'm not going to overpower anyone, realistically. You're not going to see me really, pressing everyone or giving everyone a body slam or all these big moves. But you can see me like using the strikes. I can cut down a tree in a big man. If I'm wrestling a guy who's like a giant, I'm not going to obviously go for a suplex. I'm going to go to cut him down. Kicks to the leg, kicks here, kick that, just to really chop him down to my level so I can finally be a real match,
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, that makes, to me, if you're a babyface, you're only as good as your heel, right? Because
Yeah,
you would want people to want to topple them. They're living vicariously through you. Let's not forget, right? Like you're doing the
right.
thing that they can't do. Like
Yeah,
as many people, when you think about it, how many people watch wrestling, right? Then how
right,
many people end up becoming wrestlers, and then you get to a point where people want to pay to see them, either good guy or bad guy. That
right.
that pie gets smaller and smaller. So like, what would make people want to do that? Well, because they
Yeah,
want to live vicariously,
right.
right? They want you to be every bit of that superstar. And I tell people often, no matter what form of media that they're in, right? I'm like, oh, I'm too shy. I can't do this or whatever. Well,
Yeah,
guess what? Play into that. Play
yeah,
into that. Because there's millions of people now, right?
right,
That are having a voice now that they wouldn't have in any other version of history because of things like social media, and
right.
whatever media that they consume. The hero and archetype, look at Deadpool and Spider-Man, not of muscular or like boyish
Yeah,
looks. Maybe Deadpool, right? But like, you look at like Peter Parker and whatever, like nerdy, blah blah blah. But has a silver tongue and whatever, a smart ass,
right.
and they look billions of dollars with each individual of those franchises
Yeah,
because it's serving an underserved market, right? No matter where you are, and I think combat sports and wrestlers and whatever facet of media that you consume, it's better
right.
when it's a cornucopia where you get a
Yeah,
little bit of everything. Because we were talking about it, right? Like, what was a pro wrestler? So, during the carnivals and 50s
yeah,
and the advent of TV, they were actual guys. What we now know as like jujitsu or competition grappling, they were just
right.
getting paid for it. Going even further back to George Hackenschmidt and Frank Gotch, right, at the turn of
Yeah,
the century, right? And then you kind of like peel it back or whatever. And then when you're in the 60s and 70s or whatever, well, we think that the guy at the end of the bar is the toughest guy in town, right? So we
yeah,
get the Crusher, we get the Bruiser, who look like they're Dusty Rhodes, who look like
right.
they're sitting at the end of the bar, and they could just clear a Dick Murdoch, right? Like
Yeah,
you just clearing things out. Um, and then we get into more athleticism and what have you, and we want everything about the 80s is big, right? And then you get your
right.
Hogans, your Warriors, like all of those guys, like a Sting, even to the latter part of the 80s, right?
Right.
One of the all-time greats again. And yeah, and then now you get more athleticism, right? And
Right.
I think that's where we're at, right? Where CrossFit, is a multi-billion-dollar deal, right? These are just
Yeah.
average people, but CrossFit does serve, a segment of ESPN's audience, whatever, and everybody, has a CrossFit gym somewhere near them, right? And so
Yeah.
you can wear your superhero T-shirt and do some superhero shit, and then watch
Yeah.
people go even further than you in the CrossFit games, right? Like that's it. You want people to live vicariously through you, and sometimes it may be doing things that no one else would be able to
Right.
do, and sometimes it's being exactly who that person is, and you just took it a little bit further than they did.
Yeah. And I think the concept of Spider-Man when Stanley created it was one of the most like best one of the best superheroes, because here Spider-Man, the inspiration was you couldn't see his inside his mask. He could have been any color, any race, right? And here's Spider-Man in movies and comics, like Peter Parker, you said, this is just a nerdy guy who's a teenager that is a nerd and goes to school and just, and when he puts on the suit, he's Spider-Man. He's not the biggest, he's not the most guy with the most Iron Man suit, he's not the Hulk, he's not Thor, but he's still he has that heart, that spirit inside him that's like, I have to defend my neighborhood, or I'm the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I can't, despite my size, I'm gonna keep fighting, which is again, I think a perfect, you know, comparison to like a guy like Danielson, you know, who is like a smaller guy who isn't Brock Lesnar size, but he's still one like he can break your leg in half if he wanted to with his fingers, you know, and like that's why therefore they're my inspiration, man. Because it's like I'm just a like 19-year-old kid that just loves wrestling, and how I'm gonna make it into wrestling, and it's like being myself. And how does me work is like being me and then adding some flavor to it. It's like really being myself and then turning it up, like you said, to 100. Because when I'm in the ring, like I'm in competitor mode, but I'm still me. But it's just parts of me that you don't see. That aggression, the intensity behind everything. Which is why for me, like I need to go out there and really lay those strikes in because people might see me as, oh, he can fight, but maybe, against this guy he might lose. Win or lose or draw, I need to go out there and fight like a champ. Leave everything out there in the ring. And I've seriously enjoyed my wrestling career so far. It's been like the crazy experiences, like I've gotten to meet some really good people, um, be taught by some excellent minds like Jay and Paul, and um, like it's just been great. And I've gotten to wrestle a lot of matches in my career, and I'm excited for what's coming up next, in my career. But yeah, like I said, that's just why the way I am in the ring is because I was just a kid, you know, who wanted to do this, but was seen as a smaller guy that wasn't believed to do it. So when I go out there, I'm like, yeah, I love the crowd. When the crowd's into it and they're cheering, and I have little kids like coming up to me for pictures and asking, and talking to me. Like to me, that's just like that's my Peter Parker moment, where it's like you're just a teenager, but yet you have these kids who look up to you, these kids who are like, oh my god, that's Spider-Man. Like I like that's my hero. Like to me, that's just the best feeling ever to me.
I couldn't agree more. That it's amazing, and it's something that I've seen in you, and seen you do firsthand, and I know how much that means to you because you were once that kid. So that's
Yeah.
a full circle moment. But speaking of full circle, right there, we kind of alluded to it earlier, right?
Okay.
Where I mean, and you talked about laying things in, being stiff, right? There's somebody that's being stiff with you, right? The aforementioned shallow grapes. What went down for those who are uninitiated, and give us your side of the story.
I came into Compton Mania. My first match was, I believe, I don't even remember my Compton Mania debut. It was back in, I want to say June. Hellstar Agent Aries is one of my best friends, and he's someone who, like I previously mentioned, I trained in the beginning with JTG, and I thought we were going on this full ride together. You know, we're going to tag together. We're going to be there for each other. In comes Shiloh Greaves, and this man, I respect him, but he was having a little bit of identity crisis, and he thought that, you know what, maybe I'll pick on the new guys. I want to pick on the rookies and really just beat them up. So he wrestled Agent Aries, and he beat him. He beat him with an ankle lock. And I was like, I could have been more proud of Adrian though, because he put up a good fight. Then he grabs Jimmy, my good friend Jimmy from the crowd, and just beats him up. Right? And he wants to start this group called the Visionaries, where he takes all these rookies under his wing, and he thinks he's this mentor to these guys, and he, wants to mentor them. And, he took Rigo, who was another guy who was my friend, who also trained with Kayfabe Academy. He wrestled. He wanted to under Shiloh. I tried to convince him not to do it, but he did it anyway. And then guess what? When I just when I thought that Adrian Aries was going to stick by my side and we're going to take down Shiloh Greaves together, and in the last Countermania show at the Gemwork Fest, I'm in a sling. I injured my shoulder back in August in a match for VPW. I injured the shoulder like really bad, so I couldn't compete in the Gemwork Fest. But I said, screw it, sling and everything. I'm gonna go out there and support my friend. I'm gonna be in his corner because I know Shiloh's already took Rigo, and he has Bruno Santana already in his corner. That's not fair. So I'm gonna go back my boy. I'm gonna be in his corner. I'm gonna be cheering him on. Make sure no one steps in. I don't care. I'll hit him with the back shoulder, just like George St. Pierre's coach told him, hit him with your going. So I go out there. I'm backing my boy, and guess what? He decides to spear Willow Wolf, right? And he wants to join Shiloh's side now, and super kicks me in my bad shoulder. Leaves me in the ring in pain. I got all these refs coming in, walk me out, and he's just standing there with a smile that you just want to punch off his face. So now, Shiloh has taken all my friends. He's taken all the guys who I call my brothers. He wants to take everything from me. And November is coming soon. November 1st and 9th, we have shows for Countermania. I'm not going to spoil too much, but because this has been a really good podcast, and it's According to Woods, and I'm going to give you guys a little intel here. I will be taking them down one by one. That's all I'm going to say. One by one, they will go down. Shiloh will pay for what he's done. He's selling them a dream that they think they're going to get all main event status, title matches. That's not going to happen. Agent Aries, especially you, I'm talking to you. You are not ready for this. You're not ready for what Shiloh's going to give you. You're not. And you'll learn. Soon you'll learn that you've made a grave mistake trying to learn under his umbrella. And they'll learn. They'll learn. Just wait for November, man, because I can't wait. I'm going to take down that visionary group all on my own, one by one. That's what I was alluding to earlier. I have nothing to lose, man. I've already lost two of my friends who I thought were going to ride with me to the end. Here comes some bald guy with glasses, offer them, hey, learn by me. Learn with me, and you will be successful. And okay, let's hop on that shit. Like I said earlier, they will reap what they sow, and they will lie in the bed they made.
Those are some stern words. My goodness, I didn't know how acrimonious this whole thing got. How
Oh yeah,
but one song once said, "All my friends are dead," and I feel like at some point, right, you guys thought you were gonna ride this thing thick and thin, right? To cheer each other on and your conquests and be there for you in your greatest defeats, which you did,
Yeah.
even in a compromised situation, and only to have your best interests be harmed. I can only imagine what that must be for you as a competitor, one, but also we're all humans, right? So the not just the physical pain that you endured, but the emotional pain by not
Yeah.
having your friends there, and you kind of almost have to make amends. One would even argue via con Dios, that one, right? You have to.
Right.
They're dead to you, right? Because the amount of damage that you're going to put on them, right, is probably an inkling of what you have endured by them turning their backs on you, their respective
Yep.
backs on you, right? And man, again, November. I can't wait to be there. You know what,
November.
Sean Black, I'm coming to Mania. That's it, man. I think I was going to go anyway, but this
You
right here,
you want to be there, and you want to really witness that. You want to, because you're gonna see a man that's already lost everything, and I got nothing else to lose, man. I'm gonna go out there, and I'm just gonna, take him down. And this is a message. This is where we're gonna clip right here. Shiloh, Rigo, Bruno, and Adrian Aries, the so-called visionaries. You want to parade around and follow Shiloh in his little quest of being a so-called mentor. That's fine. Just know, in November, when it comes to fight time and it's fight night and it's just us, and when I take you all down one by one, you will regret ever joining Shiloh's side. And guess what's going to happen? I'm going to leave you there the same way you guys left me in that ring, with the sling on my arm, with the referees all over me. I'm going to leave you guys the same exact way. And Adrian Aries specifically, I am not afraid to put you down. I'm going to put you to sleep because you've ripped apart years of friendship that we've developed together. And I'm going to go out there with nothing to lose and no fear. I will not hesitate to take the knockout blow. And Shiloh Greaves, you and I will one day, hopefully soon, will lock up. And when we do, man, you're in for a treat for what you did to my friends. That's all I got to say. Just my fans of Comptomania and fans in general, you're going to want to be there in November.
absolutely. And here's the thing, guys. In any other context, right? The
Right.
level of violence and brutality that is going to be shown at these shows, right? I mean, it is a family show, so don't get it twisted. But in theory, you would be locked up. They would be locked up, right? But
Yeah.
as contracted talents for this prestigious promotion, oh, everything's out the window. Everything
Yeah.
is out the window, and everything
All
is
window.
game.
It's all fair game, man. It's all under the rules of fighting. When we go out there, it's no longer just a wrestling match, it's a fight. We're in a fight. You do not want to fight with me. Because I don't fight clean. I really don't.
Oh, I love fights. Again, November. I can't wait for it. I'm gonna be there wherever it is. And again,
Awesome.
you want to follow Compton Mania's social media for
Yep.
all things Compton Mania for release dates and everything. Also, you want to see Wonderkid Will Andy's rise to this level of violence that he in his young career has not yet to attain to, but it happens. Sometimes it takes something to kind of
Yeah.
awaken a giant, a sleeping giant, to light a proverbial fire. It needs a pilot light. And this, all the
Yeah.
heartbreak and everything that you've endured by these individuals and collective, uh,
Right.
maybe this is the thing to propel you to the next phase of your
Yeah.
career.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because for me, like, I'm ready to take my career into the next level. I've always said, like, I don't want to be a local guy. I don't want to just be in California. I want to go anywhere I can. I want to go different states. I want to go different countries. Because I've already been to Victorville and San Diego twice. I and 2025, man, like I really want that to be my year, you know, because 2024 was a good year for me. I've had a lot of good shows this year. It's really been a propelling year for sure. But 2025, man, we're gonna take off into the moon. I guarantee that. I'm gonna be in the best shape of my life. You know, I'm gonna be working on my move set, working on some things I needed some dusting. But I'm excited, man. I'm really excited. You know, it's a awesome journey. I'm gonna go to, and you know, I'm just very grateful to be in this position. You know, that I'm still 19, still like teenager, but still riding this wave, and I'm living this life that I've always wanted to live. And it's funny because my mom always feared this. My mom always feared me doing this because she forever despises my dad for introducing wrestling to me because um, it made me become this. She's never really liked me watching wrestling because because I would always wrestle my dad or jump off couches, jump off beds, always hurting myself. And when I told my mom I wanted to be a wrestler, she was like, "Oh my goodness, she had the worst fit." Well, man, she was not happy, but she's more accepting of it now, that she realized like this is what making me happy, and this is what I do, and this is what I plan on doing. I plan on making it. I want to make it into WWE, AEW, TNA, or whatever. I'm really going for it. I really want everything out of wrestling. If you were to ask me like, what do you want? I want everything. I want titles. I want main event status. I want to get signed. That's what I want. I'm here to take everything. I'm not just doing it just for a hobby. This is my life. This is literally my life. You know?
Yeah, I love it. Again, it's not just the championships and it's not just the main
Yeah.
event, right? It's the championship money, the championship,
Right.
like luster, the main event
Yeah.
luster, right? And going to the pay windows, how we first, it needs stakes. And that's exactly, sometimes to get the stakes that you want
Yeah.
out of life, you have to do things that you would normally do. And I feel that
Right.
in your presence. I mean, my goodness, I can't wait to be there for Compton Mania. I will be there, folks. I guess that might be a bit of breaking news, right? Aside from
Yeah.
podcasting and meme sharing and whatever, according to Woods, we'll be there at the at those Compton Mania shows in November whenever they are announced. If they're not announced already, you want to definitely go ahead and check out Compton Mania's social media pages for all things. With that all being said, Will, obviously, I mean, you've attained so much in your career, your young, budding, burgeoning career, but you couldn't have done it alone, right? But it's sometimes you're a lone wolf, right? As you try,
Right.
you soldier out to the ring, you get to the back, and when you're in the main event, there's nobody else back there, and you
Yeah.
lucky if you get like a maybe days old sandwich, or whatever that somebody left from catering or what have you. So obviously, in those hard times, you had to have people propel you to what you in your heart of hearts are destined for. So take as long as you need. Let's get some shout outs out of the way, good sir.
So obviously, me being a teenager, 19 years old, and I'm in locker rooms with guys twice my age, and it gets really scary sometimes to perform, because like when it's a big crowd and there's a crowd out there, it's like you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to make them feel like they're watching garbage or that they've wasted their money. You know, for me, I get really nervous behind a curtain. I'm like, I'm shaky. I get tingling feelings. I get the butterflies. For me, it's important to have some people close to you. Um, one of them was Adrian Arias before his turn. You know, um, a big shout out to my girlfriend too because she's been riding this wave with me. Since I started. Ever since we started dating back in high school, I told her like, hey, I'm gonna wrestle. I'm gonna be a wrestler. She fully backed me up. She fully supported my dream. She goes to as many shows as she can. She's going to Victorville with me. She's going to San Diego. She's going to all these places with me. Like So having her around is really, really like a big help because like for me, it's scary. It's nerve wracking to be out there and to wrestle in front of a big crowd that are just eyes on you. So to know that she has my back and that she'll always be there for me is really, really helpful. Uh, I think most importantly, God. You know, number one, I'm always praying to God. I pray to God when I before I wrestle, after I wrestle, I'm always praying, grateful for the opportunities and just praying for that. That puts me at ease. And my friends my friends that support me, you know, shout out to my friends, the Avila family, like my second family. Shout out to them. You know, they've been a really big supporter of mine, and they tell me how much fun they have watching me. Um, just all my friends, man. Really, just my friends and family. Everyone, every single one. Like they know who they are that always tell me like, "Hey, dude, I'm so proud of you. I'm happy for you. Like, I enjoy watching you." Like that to me is what helps the Wonder Kid be the Wonder Kid, you know, because like it's that support, that emotional support that I need to get through the nerves of going out there, you know. And when I wrestle, and then back in my head, like, there's my family, there's my friends, there's my girlfriend, there's all these people that are watching me, and it's just like I'm in the zone now. And obviously within wrestling, shout out to guys like Matt Fuller, shout out to guys like JTG, and a massive shout out to Paul London. That's Paul. I cannot tell him how grateful I am for him and how much he's influenced my career, and he's helped me so much in my career. Like I'm, forever grateful to him. And those are the guys that gave me the advice that I need to hear. You know, when I tell them like, hey, I feel nervous, I feel scared, I don't know if I should go out there anymore, I don't know what to do. They're the guys that are like, okay, that put me at ease and really give me that motivation to still go out there, you know. But yeah, those are just some of the people that I think are really inspiring in not just in my career, but my life in general, because it's not easy being like this 19-year-old kid performing and wrestling in front of people. It's really nerve wracking. It gets you here, like it gets you very, very anxious, very scared. So to have all the people I mentioned, and there's so many more that are left out that have been influential in my life, in my career, it's been very, very beneficial, very helpful in easing those nerves, taking us right off the hands. I think that's why I've been the way I've been successful in wrestling so far, because I've had that support system and I've had those people helping me and having my back. So that's really it. Of course, I'm never alone, and I think that's what helps is that I'm never alone in this. If I feel scared, I have my girlfriend and my friends to really talk to, and I have my wrestling buddies, the people who I know from wrestling that understand what I'm going through. When they tell me like, take it easy, it's okay, you got this, we're proud of you, we're happy for you, blah blah blah. Right here, man, it helps, and that's why I've you know, been thriving a lot in wrestling.
And I mean, shout out to all of those people. And if I could, just for one,
Yeah.
can I thank your parents? Your parents, your mom carried you, and even
Oh
against
yeah.
her, against
Oh, for
her
real, of
better
course.
judgment, she wants to,
Yeah, yeah.
you'll always be her baby, right?
Of course.
That's right.
Yeah.
But because she knows your heart and how much you love this,
And
yes,
it's funny because
I,
I'm the baby of the family. I'm the youngest of three. So in my mom's eyes, I'm always her baby boy. She's always going to be looking out for me, which is why again I appreciate them, because even though like we may not agree on what we think about me doing this wrestling gig, she has all like her best intentions in her heart, and she'll always be a mother. Moms are always moms, To the day they die, they're always they're always moms. I also shout out to my dad, like big shout out to my dad, because I'm in wrestling because of him. He introduced me to this, crazy thing called wrestling, and he's also a big supporter of mine. He's been to a few of my shows. I believe he was at the first and second Kayfabe showcase. He was there to support me. So yeah, I mean, shout obviously to my parents. Like um, without them, I'm nothing. Literally, you know.
yeah, man, that's super cool, man. And it's funny because I can't remember where it was. Oh no, I think it might have been the Damian Priest documentary, right? Where like his sister is like,
Yeah,
I can't believe that's him. Like I can't believe
yeah,
he's got a brother and sister and what have you. they can't believe it's their brother that wanted to do that. There's very, I mean, as I hear you talk, and it's very, very similar to like the Damon Priest story.
Right.
And look at where that guy went. So, I mean, the sky's the limit for you, Wonder Kid, Will, Andy. Yeah, and that's the thing. Your dad as well, man. Like, yeah, if not for him and his his passion, you wouldn't be this. Like, he was passionate about something else, like baseball or whatever. Like, the stars might have not aligned us both to be here, right? So shout out to your dad as well. And guys, shout out to you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. And more like forevermore. Thank you, Will, Andy, one of the
Of
rising
course.
stars in the pro wrestling mat game, in joining us here. And if you guys could do me a favor, just a little favor, right? If you could go ahead and subscribe to the According to Wood podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. I mean, Will, you're assigned to the podcast. You're subscribed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Subscribe to According Woods, guys. Come on, like this guy. I mean, this has been a really good podcast. This has been just a great conversation, and I've already subscribed to you way before this, but you've earned my subscription twice, you know. But this has been great, man. Like, thank you for this. Like, seriously, like means a lot to be able to be on a podcast and you giving me this platform to talk about wrestling and talk about my career. Like this is what's gonna help me. This is really helpful for my career to get myself out there to your subscribers and to everything. So like I'm shout out to you, man, like for being a great host and being a great podcaster and everything. So thank you for this, man. Really appreciate it.
The pleasure's all mine, brother. Like, anytime, the floor is yours. And for those who want to see your rise as
Yeah,
you ascend to those Compton Mania shows, right, the aforementioned ones, right, and
yeah.
anything that you're doing, right, where can they find you on the socials?
You can follow me on Instagram at willandy17 or just type in Wonderkid. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel where I post my matches. I think it's just Wonderkid Willandy or something like that. I'm gonna start to post more content on my channel, like maybe some vlogs and more content. And yeah, that's where you guys can follow me and see my journey because yeah, I'll take you guys with me. I'm constantly posting about my journey, about my wrestling career. So follow me there on Twitter, Will Andy same thing 17. But yeah, like thank you again for this platform for this. Shout out Kayfabe Academy. Shout out to all my boys in Kayfabe Academy. Um, my upcoming dates I have for wrestling is October 13th, Lucha Pro, October 19th, Best Wrestling Ever. I will be in a battle royal. October 27th is Lucha Pro again, and then obviously November 1st and November the 9th is Compton Mania. You guys do not want to miss these shows. These are going to be spooky seasons here. Come out, enjoy some really good wrestling, and yeah, just big shout out to all my friends and family that are watching this right now. All my friends, everyone that's watching, shout out to you people because you guys are, like I said earlier, like all my friends, like Tabia, Avila, like all you guys, like you guys are been really influential in my life. And like I said, thank you, According to Woods, for this podcast, man, for this. Really appreciate it, man. You've been really great, man. Thank you.
No, thank you. And again, thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. This is what we do. And if you don't believe me in subscribing to the podcast, or the Wonder Kid will end me in subscribing to the podcast, I don't know what we would do to make you subscribe to this podcast. I know, maybe another pro wrestler, Zeta Zhang, will help convince you.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to Woods YouTube.